I'm going to show you a piece of anti-American spin from an Obama advisor on Latino issues. I mean, I immediately go to Hollywood for this one. Eva Longoria.
No, but you know, people come to this country in different circumstances. Cubans came as political refugees. They were welcomed and supported and given financial aid. Mexicans were occupied. Puerto Ricans are still, you know, in flux whether they can vote or they can't vote, and you know, the statehood. So
will Rubio help him, or will he?
Well, I think it's funny because I think the argument between will Latinos now switch over to Mitt Romney because he's going to have a Latino running mate is saying that women would have voted for Palin just because she was a woman.
Right.
I think it's deceiving, and I think Latinos are smarter.
Kind of insulting.
It's insulting, yeah.
Look, I don't have a problem with Eva Longoria being proud of her Mexican heritage. I don't really know. I don't care. I mean, personally, I'm extremely proud to be an American. I may have German heritage, but I wasn't born in Germany. My family's been over here for, you know, 100 years or so. But to each his own. You want to celebrate Mexico? Great. But for her to drop the Mexicans were occupied crap on us, for it to be eaten up by the mindless morons in the Bill Maher audience, it has got to be corrected. Set the record straight. Can we, please? Let me ask you this question. As occupiers, I suppose that American, the official language of the Mexican people, right? The American language. No? Well, then it must be English, don't you think? Wait. No, wait a minute. We allowed them to hang on to their Mexican language. Right? Yeah, that's it. Just out of the goodness of our hearts, to be spoken in Mexico now, Mexican is spoken. Now, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right either. Oh, I remember, the official language there is Spanish. Spanish? Now, wait a minute. How'd that happen? You see, the Spaniards occupied Mexico for 300 years. Where do you suppose the word Hispanic comes from? You're going to love this one. It's actually the word that Rome used for the region that included Spain when Rome, the Italians, occupied that region, Hispania. So Spanish comes from the root word Hispania, which the Italians used when they occupied what now is Spain. So the Spanish language, which is spoken by the Mexicans in most of South America, because the Spanish occupied Mexico and the regions of South America, but that comes really from the Romans who were occupying Spain. So how did he get to Mexico? From the time Cortez and Spain conquered Mexico. Shortly after arriving in 1519 until Mexico declared independence in 1810 and finally won it in 1821. It was Spain that occupied Mexico, not the United States of America. No, So the territory in question was Spanish territory for all but 15 years. Does anybody ever talk about giving it back to Spain? Because it was Mexico and Mexican territory until the Texans. And the Texans, mostly Anglos by that time, but also some Mexicans who came north, tried to overthrow the Spanish rule because they were tired of it. They declared their independence in 1836. So it hadn't been Mexico for 1,500 years, not even 150 years. It wasn't even 50 years. It was 15 years that it was Mexico, 15, period. Interestingly, Mexico never recognized Texas independence, even after losing the war with Texas. So the border disputes and incursions continued with the Mexicans. In 1845, Texas was annexed by the United States. We're occupying the Texans' land. And the border problem with Mexico became America's problem. When they were patrolling the disputed area between Texas and Mexico, 11 soldiers were killed by the Mexican military. 2 days later, May 13, 1846, Congress approved President James K. Polk's request to declare war on Mexico. By the time the war had ended, a little over a year and a half later, American troops had taken all of Texas, New Mexico, into southern California to the west, and Monterrey, Mexico, northern and central Mexico, and all the way down to Mexico City itself on the south. That's how much we had. But on February 2nd, 1848, the two countries signed the Treaty of Guadalupe. What was this? Well, it was an agreement that meant that the U.S. troops would withdraw from Mexico, including Mexico City, and the U.S. would now take ownership of the southwestern United States in addition. Even after just routing Mexico's forces, the U.S. also agreed to buy the land for $15 million. Wait a minute. We bought the land? The United States did not occupy or rule Mexico. We didn't impose our government on them. We didn't leave troops behind in Mexico. The United States won a war, signed a treaty, and then went the extra distance. We paid for the land despite the victory. And as always, the United States left. It's fascinating, though, isn't it? Considering that history is being written by the winners, to look up the accounts on this war on the internet and see the unmistakable anti-American spin. History's written by the winners. How come it looks like this? Was the United States absolutely without fault in the lead up to the conflict? No. Manifest destiny played a role, and we've spoken out about that and against the evil that was 100 times on this program. But to paint Mexico as the purest driven snow, and certainly in no fault here, yet oh so picked on tiny little neighbor that's been there forever and ever, being bullied by the big, ugly superpower United States of America is ludicrous. America wasn't even a superpower in 1848. Yeah, granted, we had thrown the powerful British out 2 times. But Mexico had defeated the powerful Spaniards, not to mention that Mexico's Santa Anna was one of the great battle-hardened military leaders of the time and had vast numbers advantage over the U.S. troops in the war. Still, strangely, we are continually bombarded with the ignorance of people like Eva Longoria, and worse, many of our own politicians, leading to the pathetic immigration policies we have to endure to this day and the consternation of the world on this issue. It's astounding to witness the mentality of so many when it comes to the territory that seized in war, in which we were victorious and then we paid for. The only other country on earth that seems to be subjected to this mentality is what? Name it. Name one. I can only name one. Israel. The Israelis were granted their homeland by the United Nations, as were the Palestinians in the UN's partition plan of 1947. In 48, they were attacked by the Arab world in an effort to take all of the land for Palestine and kick the Jews out. Well, the Israelis won. But what did they do? They gave the land back that they had gained in that war. And then they were attacked again in 1956, and they won. They gained the Sinai Peninsula, which they gave back. They were surrounded and attacked again in 1967, this time routing the Arabs for 6 days. They pushed them all the way back. This time they gave back most of the land, but for the first time, not all of it, for security reasons, to stop the Arabs from using the West Bank and Gaza to launch attacks against them. I've stood right there. I've stood there. There's no way to defend the land without it. They kept a portion of it this time. And like the United States, they have never heard the end of it. In fact, today is Nakba Day, Nakba, which is Arabic for catastrophe or disaster. It marks the 64th anniversary of the establishment of Israel. Thousands of Palestinians rallied to commemorate Nakba Day by throwing stones and firebombs at Israeli civilians and IDF forces. What other nation has ever been subjected to this bizarre standard that land won in war is somehow or another disputed or occupied? I want you to look at a map, any map. Look at old maps. There are changes there all over the world. Why? I had a map. When I was a kid, I had a globe in my room. I wish I had it now. Said the Soviet Union on it. It looks different than it does now. But why? In large part because of wars. Check out a pre-World War I map of Europe. What happened to the Ottoman Empire? Why don't the Austro-Hungarians have their empire anymore? Why are Austria, Hungary, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, large parts of Serbia and Romania, and smaller parts of Italy, Poland, Ukraine, why are they now occupying that territory? For some 50 years, the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union. Why? They just went and they took their satellite countries after World War II. We didn't like it, but the UN was positively silent. France, Great Britain, others still have colonies. Great Britain took the Falklands in Argentina back in 1982, and there's very little, if anything, said about that today. Even China's brutal occupation of Tibet draws zero condemnation in the UN and only an occasional Free Tibet bumper sticker on the back of Richard Gere's latest Mercedes S-Class. This is ridiculous, gang. It's time for the lies and the spin to stop. And if they don't want to stop it, that's fine. We just have to tell the truth to each other. We have to teach it to our kids. Let the truth be known and proclaimed to the world, a world nearly devoid of the truth right now. It's time for Eva Longoria and other people like her to stop. Eva, go find another slutty housewife to portray. I'm sure they're going to come up with another show for you. You're hot. But just stop telling the lies and the spin about the United States and Mexico. Can't we once again come together as different people with different ideas and different policies, but unite on the heritage of our ideas, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If and when we do that, we will become the melting pot. And that melting pot makes us stronger. And we will become invincible again, because we have once again recognized that the sum is greater than its parts.